She won't kill what?
My dog will she gets birds all the time.
Yeah.
And she'll just torture them. She won't kill them though.
Yeah, my cat does that with chipmunks and stuff. She'll just maim them and then chase them around the house and then let the dog or the front porch and then let the dog play with them and chase them around. And I'm like, can't y'all just dispatch this animal? Anyway, try to feed it to the chicken. Did I tell you about the time I fed a snake to the chicken?
Yes.
That was on one of my Luke Exotic pages. Anyway, it was pretty funny to watch them fight over that snake. I don't know about the cat had actually killed the snake. So and then I was like, well, I don't want to let this snake to go die in vain. So let's feed him to the chickens. All right, number 29, bioaccumulation. So 2 topics we're going to discuss today. Bioaccumulation and biomagnification. DeQuinte, that is correct. Bioaccumulation is when those toxins or harmful substances in the water accumulate as you swim around and drink the water and encounter them. And then biomagnification is that process by which they increase in organisms as you go up the food chain or food web. So we're going to run through that and we're going to discuss these in further detail. So number 29. Bioaccumulation, the selective absorption and concentration of elements or compounds. So we're talking about things like DDT, Pcbs, Mercury, lead, things of that nature. Probably, I would say, if you're going to see it on the AP exam, DDT, Pcbs, or Mercury are probably your number one through 3, that you may see. Anyway. Compounds by cells in living organisms. So as you encounter them, they accumulate in your tissues, most commonly fat-soluble compounds. Now, fat-soluble is really important because how do we store energy? In fat. So if it's dissolvable, if it's a fat-soluble compound, then it's something that you can take in and that you could store long-term, and then when something eats you, then it could be passed on to them. So that's kind of the issue with the fat-soluble compounds. And if you look on 478 over here, we've got a nice picture of a food chain where biomagnification happens. But at the top of the page, it talks about solubility and fat-soluble compounds. Andrew, you getting this or you taking a nap back there? All right. Solubility, how well a chemical can dissolve in a liquid. Some chemicals are readily soluble in water, whereas others are much more soluble in fats and oils. So I'm not going to get into a bio lesson today, Luke, on polar and non-polar molecules, but some absorb in those fats and store in those much better. And we talked about that with DDT and Pcbs. So, where were we? Number 30, biomagnification. So stuff's in the water, it's accumulating as organisms encounter it, they swim through it, they drink it. Which organisms are just really getting their chemicals in the picture from that bioaccumulation? The plankton. So we're going to get into the others in a second. So those others are going to be more products of biomagnification. But you can see the amount of DDT in the water is very small. It says, whatever that number is, that's about 50 parts per trillion. It's a very small number. That's a very small amount of DDT. But when you wind up going all the way to the top, you see the osprey there has about 13.8 parts per million. So that's significantly more than what's found in the water. So here's a good question for you, Andrew. If, let's say you go to a body of water and it says, do not eat the largemouth bass or do not eat the channel catfish because of mercury, or DDT, or PCBs, any of those that could be harmful to us. So, do you think it would be okay to swim in the water?
Yes.
Okay, probably, because most oftentimes the amount in the water is significantly less than what it's going to be in some of those bigger, higher level predators. Okay, so in your book, let's go to the note number 30, and then we'll look at some statistics in the book. Number 30, biomagnification is the increase in concentration of substances per unit of body tissue that occurs in successively higher trophic levels of a food chain or in a food web. So basically, as you go up the food chain or food web, you're going to have more and more of this. And that's kind of what that assignment that you guys had with the bald eagle that y'all are working on, and it's due by Monday. Yes. Okay. Now, I did find some clarification on the eagle and the seal, where you can see this isn't like a likely thing to happen where an eagle eats the seal. I did hear a couple instances of like maybe an eagle captured a little seal baby or something, but that's not normal. I think the eagle eating the seal was more of a reference to when seals die, a lot of times the eagles will scavenge them and they'll still have those chemicals in their body, and that's why they had it pointing there. Now, if I was making a food web, I wouldn't have done that because I only like to do the arrows with stuff that's like eating other stuff, but I know why they did it for biomagnification, just because they can sometimes scavenge off of those dead seals. But anyway, in your book on 479, read that first paragraph right there for us. Donovan, go. Start with because. 479, bro, first paragraph on the left side. It's like the fourth word. Go, Colby.
Because of biomagnification along the food chain, the concentration of DDT in the bird is nearly 8 million times higher than the concentration in the water. The concentrated DDT causes fish in the bird to produce thin-shelled eggs that often were when the plant that's all birds incubated the eggs.
All right, hold on a second. So, that's all we needed. Biomagnification of the birds. Now, my book says a different number than yours, and I finally figured out where that number came from. I don't know where they got the 8 million times higher. Maybe that's on average. Basically, what that means is when you go up higher in the food chain, you're going to have significantly more a concentrated amount of a chemical, DDT, Pcbs, Mercury, whatever, as you go up higher in the food chain because they're eating a lot of little things under them. Now, they're not going to consume every bit of DDT. It's not going to be transferred. You remember that whole second law of thermodynamics? Some of it they're going to eat, some of it a little bit will break down, and some of it they'll poop out. But a lot of it they will ingest, and it will get incorporated into their tissues. Now, if you look at the picture on 478, I want you to calculate really quick. Get your calculator out. I want you to calculate how many times more DDT is in the osprey, which has 13.8 parts per million DDT, than in the water, which is 0.00005 parts per million of DDT. So let's find out exactly how much more is in the osprey than is in the water right here. And you could apply this same level to, hold on a second, you could apply this same level to like a largemouth bass or a catfish, where we talked about, fish advisories. For those of you out here who like to fish, make sure you look at the fish advisories for your state, because there are many locations where it's not safe to eat the larger fish. What you got, Rach?
276,000.
Yeah, so I've got an older book. This is the first book we got when I started teaching this class, and mine says 276,000. I think from that data and this experiment that it talks about under this. I'm not sure why they changed it to 8 million or where that came in, but regardless, you've got a much higher concentration of chemicals in these higher level predators. This is why we talked about with the Cove video, they said that dolphins were basically toxic waste because they had so much mercury. The level of mercury that, like the max level you're supposed to have in a food is, I think, 0.4 parts per million. And I want to say some of the dolphin meat that they found and sampled had like 2,000 parts per million. So that's a pretty big jump over that 0.4 level. Like the 0.4, you're getting close to that with some of the like fancier tunas and stuff. So, and that's one of the reasons they talk about pregnant women, not supposed to be eating or limiting their amount of tuna. So when you go above that, I mean, you're getting significant amounts of mercury intake, okay? All right, number 31. Some effects that can occur in an ecosystem when persistent substances is biomagnified can include eggshell thinning, which we just talked about, and developmental deformities in top carnivores of higher trophic levels. So if you go over to 472, you can see here they talk about mercury. damaged brain, kidneys, liver, immune system, PCBs, impaired learning, cancer, liver damage, lead, impaired learning, nervous system disorders, death. So there are a lot of these chemicals that we can be exposed to when we eat things that can impact our brain function and development. I would say, you guys, as you get older and have kids, this is something like, I like to eat organic when I can. It's obviously a little more expensive, and I'm a tightwad, so I have this conflict in my brain about what I should buy. Is it worth it? I don't know. But when my wife was pregnant with both of our kids, we pretty exclusively bought organic produce and fruits and stuff. Just because it's one of those things, if you can limit the amount of chemicals and harmful substances your babies are exposed to, especially earlier on, it's going to, the earlier on they're affected by something, the worse it is, because those cells are dividing very quickly. Like you're talking about hundreds of thousands of nerve cells every day being produced at some points in pregnancy. So the earlier on that you can protect that baby and offer them a good, safe environment to grow, the better off they will be later on, okay? That's why you see so many people who do drugs or exposed to certain chemicals that have problems with their children when they're born because of those chemicals they're exposed to during birth. All right, number 32, humans. Humans also experience harmful side effects in biomagnification, just like we talked about. Nervous system, circulatory system, which is your heart and blood and whatnot, and then reproductive system. We've talked about some of those reproductive issues with the atrazine and the chemicals from the video. Circulatory system, I was thinking of that one that we talked about earlier was from Chernobyl when they were, the Chernobyl heart, the issue there from consuming the foods and stuff. And so I'm not sure about other circulatory issues. I don't know if it mentions any on this page. I don't see any. But those are all issues to worry about when you're talking about harmful chemicals that you can be exposed to, okay? Number 33. Well, actually, one other thing I wanted to add in. Where does most of the mercury in the environment? So that's one of our big neurological ones. Where is that coming from? From the burning of coal, yeah. So as we phase out coal, that's one good side effect, that and also the limitations on acid rain and in the environment. So hopefully that will be a benefit that we see in the future. Number 33, DDT, mercury, and PCBs are substances that bioaccumulate and have significant environmental effects. So like I said, I'm reading, if y'all are wondering where I'm getting all this notes and stuff from, this is straight out of the College Board binder that they sent me. So I know that we add in stuff, some details and some, nuances that maybe aren't mentioned, but these are things that they mentioned. So I know that if you see something on a test, it's probably going to be one of those three that you have to know about. Okay? All right, any questions there? So, anybody have any questions about biomagnification? Higher up the food chain, the bigger the stuff you eat, stuff that's up higher up the food chain, the more it's going to have concentrated. And you see this a lot. One other point I want to make before we stop. In aquatic organisms. Why do you think that is?
Because it has room to dissolve.
Yeah, a lot of these chemicals are in the water. Like if they settle out in the soil, you would have to be consuming plants or something that eats those plants that has a lot in it, which you don't see as much. But it seems like in the water, those chemicals that have been washed in there, the PCBs, the DDT, which were done a long time ago, and remember they're very persistent, so they last a long time, they're still hanging around. Mercury, that too. You just don't see that as much in the soil as you do in aquatic systems. Okay? All right.